to Romance Isn't Dead, episode 40. Today, we are traveling in Florence, but we've lost our Baedekers. Raye, how's it going?
We have sunshine. It's a Friday when we're recording this, and I'm not working. So,
Oh,
how do you
wow.
think I'm doing?
Oh, wow. You really do have this huge smile on your face. I am actually, y'all, I am recording this before I work, but fortunately I'm working from home, so I don't really have to be lovely. Not that I'm ever lovely, but I don't have to have my hair done and my face on and all that good stuff. I had to go out the other day to buy something, and I'd called ahead to make certain that the shop had what I needed, and she did, and I said, okay, well, I have to put my face on. And I realized I hadn't said that in a really long time. And it's an old, I guess it's a Southern thing, I don't know, but I had to put my face on. But I did. I had to put makeup on and do my hair, and I was like, what is this? It's for the birds, man.
Yeah, well, I put my face on. It's called moisturizer.
Yeah, no, mine's a little more complicated than that. But I mean, it doesn't take me long, but it was one of those things where I was like, I didn't even think about it. I was like, oh, well, I've got to put my face on. And I was like, what? Wait.
And that sounds weird. I find it quite weird because, I mean, we're the same age,
Hmm.
and I speak with so many people who are, I mean, my sister is a perfect example. She will put her face on before she goes anywhere. So will my niece. And so will a lot of people I know. However, I don't wear makeup. I
Hmm.
put two different moisturizers on in the morning. I put an anti-aging mask on before I go to bed every night, and that's it.
Hmm.
That is the extent of my beauty regime. I
Well,
just can't be bothered with the rest of it.
mine's a little more complicated than that. But I mean, I'm pretty low maintenance. But if I'm gonna go out, I like to at least put my, you know, tinted moisturizer on and slap some mascara on and maybe some eyeliner. I don't know. It's just, I think you just have to find what works for you and just roll with it from there is how it
I think
works.
mine's laziness.
Well, I mean,
I
if
just
if
I
lazy
cannot be
works.
bothered. Lazy works. I just can't be bothered with the whole putting on makeup, faffing around with mascara. I spend a lot of time because, I mean, like many people, my job is incredibly screen heavy. I write for a living, and I will stare at a screen for 8, 9 hours. In
Hmm.
fact, I get while I've been working at home, um, I've been working a lot longer hours than that, and I think that the majority of people who are working from home have found that. And my eyes, by the end of the day, I've been rubbing them so much that if I did put mascara on, it would be all over my face.
Right.
So there's just no point.
Right. Well, the other thing is you may want to try and invest in some of those blue tinted glasses to help your eyes with the screen time.
I have some.
Okay.
I don't wear them. My proper glasses have those. I'm supposed to wear those all the time.
Okay. Never
Have you
mind.
ever have you ever seen me wearing them?
No.
Neither's anyone else. It's not good. I do admit that by the end of the day, my eyes are incredibly tired, but I only wear my glasses when I go to the cinema or when I'm gaming.
Okay. Well, you heard it here, folks. There it is. All right, y'all. Well, let's talk about A Room with a View. And
Mm.
I'll be honest with you, I had forgotten about this, but I the first time I went to, or the second time I went to Europe, I had seen this movie. I'd seen it, I think, before I went the first time.
Well, it
But,
came out in 1985.
right. So I had seen it before the first time I went to Europe. But I think when I was searching for a guidebook, I looked for a Baedeker because of this movie. Just because it just seemed so perfectly European to have a Baedeker. And so I think I wound up with a four or a Fodor's. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. It seemed so perfectly European to have a Baedeker. So I had to look for a Baedeker. And I might have found one. I'm not sure. But Yeah, I actually did not read the book until after I'd seen the movie. And I saw, and this time out, I read the book first, then watched the movie immediately afterward. So, what order did you do that, Ray? Did you watch the movie first or read the book first? Oh, it looks like she is definitely in the camp of having read the book first.
Yeah,
So,
this time round, this time, well, actually, no. Have to be honest, this book actually, I years ago, back in the dark ages, when GCSEs had first started in the UK, we had to, between our second to last and our last year of our GCSEs, we had to produce a self, we had to decide for ourselves on an essay to write. And we had to pick the subject, get it approved, and everything else. And I actually wrote about A Room with a View and Lady Chatterley's Lover.
mm-hmm.
And it was Classic or Obscenity was the title of the essay. And I remember this, I was 15 when I wrote it. So we are talking 31 years ago. I wrote this essay. And I'd read Pride and Prejudice, not Pride and Prejudice, A Room with a View about 6 times before I wrote the essay. And obviously I'd seen the film. And the first thing that struck me when I started watching the film again was I realised that this film was the first time I'd ever seen a naked man.
Interesting side note.
I figured.
When we first talked about doing this, I went to Amazon. I was like, you know what? I think I have this DVD, but I have no clue where. You know, it's just not worth the fight. I'll just buy a new one. No big deal. And I saw that several people on Amazon were very fussy because apparently they had cut some scenes from the movie, and that was one of the scenes that they had cut. Yes, in the DVD, yes. And
well,
so,
they didn't cut it from mine.
No, because you've had it. And
I've had it for a very long time. I have
yeah.
to admit, I think this was one of the first DVDs I ever purchased.
Okay, so you've had that DVD, right? And so, but apparently some of the newer versions, not versions of it, but some of the newer ones,
Cuts.
They cut that. And so I was watching the movie last night and I was wondering if they were going to cut that scene, and they did not. They did not cut the scene from the streaming version.
In a strange way, that particular scene in the film is quite important.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think so?
I think it shows because all we've seen previously of George is we know he's
kind
depressed
and
he's very intense. He's very thoughtful, incredibly intelligent, but he overthinks things. And in this one particular scene, it's the first time we really see him as joyful, boyish, a man who's not quite found his place, someone who has intense emotion, but at the same time can relax. And it's the first time we really see that aspect of his personality.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me kind of add to that in terms of I think we need to give our listeners who maybe have not had the joy of A Room with a View a synopsis.
Read it.
Yeah, a
Read
synopsis. So the synopsis is basically that Lucy Honeychurch is a young English girl who travels to Florence, to Italy for her... Okay. I will read the back of Raye's. Lift it up a little bit. When Lucy visits Italy with her prim and proper cousin Charlotte, she is on the verge of an experience that will throw her neatly ordered life quite off balance. Back in England, she finds that her relationships with her family, with the unconventional Emersons, and with her supercilious fiancé pull her between the social and sexual proprieties of her upbringing and the spontaneous promptings of her heart. And, of course, it is the heart that wins in this sunniest and most readable of Forster's novels. and she has to sniff the book because it's paperback. So,
Yeah, not only that, I have had this paperback book since 1986, I think, maybe 87.
this book was written, what, 1906?
1908.
1908.
It was released. He actually started writing it originally. In the front of this book, one of the reasons I got this particular copy when I was doing my GCSEs was because he started writing plans for it in 1901.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got distracted. He found her very, very difficult to write. A lot of what he'd originally written for this ended up in a room in Where Angels Fear to Tread.
Mm-hmm.
And the original ending of the book, the story, a much less sunny affair than that of A Room with a View, ends inconclusively with Lucy in Rome having abandoned her cousin in Florence. And that's how he envisaged the original book ending.
Okay, so this book has a happily ever after in that Lucy eventually throws over the supercilious is the best possible word for Daniel Day-Lewis's Cecil.
I had a lot of words for him.
But supercilious works.
Oh yes, supercilious. He's arrogant. He's snobbish. Yet he actually accuses other people of being snobbish. He doesn't really see Lucy as a person.
Okay, so this is what I want to say. I really do. This is one of those movies especially that I loved. And I think that the movie is pretty faithful to the book.
It is incredibly faithful to the book.
I mean, you've got Judi Dench's character, Eleanor Lavish. Eleanor Lavish doing some some of the things that she did to Lucy, she actually did to Charlotte in this book. But I think for the movie, it worked better because you are better able to see Charlotte and Eleanor's relationship, so it makes more sense as things kind of go down the line. But I never felt like I got to know Lucy in the book or the movie.
In the book, you see, in the book, I felt like I got to. I mean, I showed you my notes. They are embarrassing.
Copious.
I made about 7 or 8 pages of handwritten notes while I was reading the book. And one of the things I found about her was in the film, you actually can tell how her character is feeling from her hairstyle.
Up, down, yes.
Especially when she goes to stay with Cecil. Oh my God, he's horrible. And his mother, who's probably just as bad. You don't really see very much of her at all. And she's a mere mention really in the book. There's a certain line that annoys me that comes from her, but that's neither here nor there. She's mirroring his mother. Mm-hmm. With the hairstyle. It's very prim and proper. It looks like something out of
they had the Gibson girl hairstyle.
The
hairstyle
reminds me of the owner of the Siamese cats in Lady and the Tramp,
which is also the wicked stepmother in Cinderella. But anyway,
yeah, exactly. It's a Gibson kind of hairstyle.
It's a Gibson girl.
It's that kind of hairstyle. And then when she's with George, she's far more relaxed. Her hair is down. It's more girlish, more natural, more her. I mean, you do see she has a lot of humor. And I think that many things that she does are in reaction to how other people are acting around her.
Right. And for me, that is why I have a really difficult time knowing Lucy, because she is so acted upon, right? It seems like everything she's acted upon, and in the movie, it seems very clear that it's a happily ever after, and they're very happy with one another, and they're back at the pensione, and
they're in I think
Italy
that
at the same place and saying, oh, it's like they have just another set of us basically here. And that's fine. But, and I finally feel like I've gotten a handle on her in the movie, or even, excuse me, even from the book and the movie. I finally feel like I've got a handle on her and who she wants to be and who she can be with, especially with George by the end. But it's like she's forcing herself into these specific roles that different people expect her to play. And you get hints of that because, her piano playing is very passionate, and it's not that it is the most enthralling piano playing in the world. It's just that she puts so much of her personality into her piano playing, and that's where you see sort of glimpses of this personality of this woman that she can become. And it really is, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, very much a coming of age story.
Yeah, it definitely is.
And I like coming of age stories, but she just seems so acted upon for so long. And early on in the book and in the movie, I'm like, girl, you do you know what I mean? And I think that's just, 21st century woman being very impatient with a early 20th century woman. But it did, to me, feel I'm going to say this, and it might be controversial. To me, it felt like she was a woman written by a man.
Well, she was.
I know, but that came through. Came through. That this is a romance novel written by a man. But
at the same time, he manages to inject a lot of elements of romance into it, I think. But they actually come from very strange sources. Mm-hmm. I think one of the strangest finds I had in the book, oh my God, I've got so many notes. The narrator, I love the narrator comments.
Yeah, I do too. I wish they had been, in my volume, it wasn't clear when it switched to the narrator and then back. I wish that had been more clear in my volume, but it wasn't. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, in one of them I found it quite amusing. And it says, it is obvious enough for the reader to conclude she loves young Emerson. A reader in Lucy's place would not find it obvious. Life is easy to chronicle but bewildering to practice, and we welcome nerves or any other shibboleth that will cloak our personal desire. She loved Cecil. George made her nervous. Will the reader explain to her that the phrases should have been reversed? I love things like that. They just come out of almost nowhere.
But it would have been helpful if they didn't. If I'd known, like every time the narrator popped up, it took me a minute to realize, oh, this is the narrator. And I think it was just the volume of the book I read, because I read it in a compilation volume of 3 books by E.M. Forster. And it was the middle book. And I just was like, wait, what just happened? So I think it's just the edition that I read. It's not.
Yeah, you see, I've got this one is a reprint of the edition that was originally produced in 1955. So about 40 years after the book was released, if actually not even that. Another one, I think the realization of love actually comes from Mr. Emerson, George's father.
Yeah, old Mr. Emerson.
I loved Mr. Emerson, old Mr. Emerson. Even in the film, he's so well acted and he's endearing. Mm-hmm. There's something charming about him. And you know that I absolutely hated Mr. Eager, but we all go there later. But it's the way he says to her when Lucy decides, she calls off her engagement to Cecil, so relieved. But she says, please release me. It's like he's holding her prisoner. And maybe she feels like she's been held prisoner. And she goes to tell Mr. Emerson, don't move out. I'm going to Greece. And he says, you are leaving him. You are leaving the man you love. And it's almost at this point that you realise that she's talking about George and he's talking about his assumptions regarding Cecil. And she says, I had to. Mm-hmm. And then he starts... then he says, I think he puts it well, man has to pick up the use of his functions as he goes along, especially the function of love. Then he burst out excitedly, that's it, that's what I mean. You love George. And he's the one that tells her, even though she's sort of realized it, his words to her are what really bring it home. That all along she's been resisting this attraction she has to him because she doesn't feel that anybody would approve of it. And in a way, she's horrified at her own actions.
Right. I have a question about Lucy and where the book says that they are basically just middle class gentry, right? Like
Well,
slightly upper.
her
He
father was a
was a
solicitor.
solicitor.
Yeah.
So where does that real? But apparently he was well off, right? So where does that actually put her in the social strata?
Well, it puts her thinking about it. She's not working class because working class would be uneducated. So
Mm-hmm.
she'd probably be upper middle.
Okay, and so what is George? Just middle?
Well, his father was educated
And he was
and he's
educated.
not, he was educated, but at the same time, he works on the railways.
But we never know where on the railways or how on the
Yes, we
railways.
do. He's a clerk. He's a clerk on the railways, and
What
his
does that
father was
mean?
a journalist. It means that he doesn't work on the actual railway lines. He's not a driver or a porter or anything. Which
Right.
that so angered me. The immediate assumption, because they didn't speak like everybody else in Italy, that he works on the railways. He must be a porter.
Right, and I was thinking, I don't think so. But anyway, okay,
No,
so,
you don't find out until later on what he actually does on the
okay,
railways.
I missed it. Because I wasn't sure. So he's a,
Yeah, I read it quite intently this time round. I mean, I always do, but I did read it quite deeply, as you can tell from the notes.
yeah.
But it makes him middle class, maybe lower middle class.
But then if he marries her, she's got money, so that'll make him,
Yeah, she inherits. That's the thing.
I
She
come
says
into
to her
my money
mother,
next year.
yeah, so I will spend more time traveling. And her mother is heartbroken, but at the same time, she's relieved that she's not going to marry Cecil,
Yes, she's like,
which
you
I
called
find
it
quite
off. That's
funny.
great. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, but now what are you going to do?
yeah.
Um, So it's quite nice to see that everybody supports her in the fact that she's quit Cecil, but then she runs off with George.
And in the book, it's clear
They
that this isn't
they eloped.
that it's mostly an elopement, although she says
Yeah.
it's not. um,
Mm.
and it's not so clear in the
Film.
film. In the film, it seems like everyone is very supportive. So yeah.
I don't
Um,
care. I love the fact that they end up together.
oh, absolutely. I would be. I'm a happily ever after junkie. I would not be okay with her ending up with Cecil. I say
There was something
Cecil.
about Yeah, there was something about him that I always remembered when I was rereading the book, and even before I picked up the book again, I found him loathsome. But there are quite a few loathsome characters in this book.
Mr. Eager is definitely loathsome.
I'd say, see, I mean, you saw the messages I sent you yesterday. I
Yeah,
really don't like Charlotte. And I know that it sounds really strange because Charlotte is played by Maggie Smith in the film and played very well. I mean, they have an incredible cast in the
it
film.
really do.
Yeah, they have an amazing cast. And Maggie Smith plays Charlotte, Lucy's older cousin. And there seems to be, it's almost like she's incredibly two-faced.
Hmm.
Incredibly two-faced. She is on the surface, she's, oh, you must have this, you must have that. But then underneath, there's these little undertones, like when they're out
She
in the
knows she's
field.
resentful.
She's incredibly resentful, and there's those little undertones of when she says it's strange. The whole thing starts over literally a room with a view.
She is very passive aggressive. Don't worry about my cough. It is altogether. It's not from sitting on the ground.
I'll stand up if it gets bad.
I'll stand up if it gets bad. So, of course, Lucy can't let her sit on the ground kind of thing. I mean, she's just very manipulative.
And also, I'll have the bigger room because it belonged to
The
the
son.
son. It didn't. if you read the book,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
end up in the smaller room when they go back to the pension after they're married, and he says, "Oh, this is my room. We're
yeah.
in my. It's funny, we're in my old room." And she says, "Oh, but Charlotte said that the bigger room was yours." And we
Right.
know that the bigger room wasn't his, and she probably knew the bigger room wasn't his, but she wanted it. So she used that as a way to manipulate Lucy into accepting the smaller room all along. And
Not
also,
that
she
Lucy probably actually cared.
cared, and she
Yeah.
also betrayed her trust
Yes, she did. Now,
so many times.
but
Ugh.
but that having been said, the movie is kinder to Charlotte.
Oh, yes,
The movie is
it
much
is.
kinder to Charlotte than the book is, which I find interesting. Um, and yeah, and I don't think, as you said, I don't think they could have picked a better cast for this film.
It's
Now,
a very, very young Helena Bonham Carter plays Lucy.
right, it's
The
crazy.
ingenue.
Yes, it's crazy. This is the Helena Bonham Carter of Lady Jane Grey, right?
Yes, it is indeed. It's
And
not the lady. It's not the Helena Bonham Carter of Harry Potter
or the one
or
that,
Alice in Wonderland.
or really any of the Helena Bonham Carters that staggers out of the limo, for the award shows in some
The wild hair and the
wild hair, wild dress, wild shoes. It's not even the Helena Bonham Carter of the fairy godmother in the live action Cinderella, but I like Helena Bonham Carter. By the way, I'm not being
yes.
critical. But it is just, I don't like love triangles. It just is a general rule of thumb. They are not my jam.
But this really isn't really a love triangle.
No, it's not, because I guess I'm just, so I guess I'm wondering if this had been real life and it went the way the book said, would they have then retired back to England? He would have continued being a clerk on the railroad, but just in slightly better circumstances.
I don't know because I get the feeling that whatever happens, that she talks about how her family isn't massively supportive of it, but his father, I don't imagine, would be disapproving because
No, he no. He would have been entirely
that's
approving.
that's one of the things I found quite interesting about the film. We sense the dislike and the animosity between Mr. Eager and Mr. Emerson when they meet in the church,
Mm-hmm.
but there's no accusations made against him in the film as there are in the book.
Right. And this is just, he's just, Mr. Eager is like the stereotypical terrible, terrible preacher. You
He's Mr.
know,
Collins.
he is.
I know it sounds
That
really
is
weird. I
correct.
was looking at the book, and the first thing when we, in fact, I actually wrote it down. Reverend Beebe is someone people defer to, and he's played amazingly by Simon Callow in the film. He offers guidance to people, and they respect him for it, e.g., Miss Bartlett, but he isn't staid and serious and can relate to the younger characters such as Lucy and Freddie when they all go for that incredibly eye-opening dip. He's a total contrast to the religious characters that we find in Austen, e.g., Mr. Collins and Mr. Elton. However, that is who I see when I see Mr. Eager.
Because that is the stereotype, even 100 years on, of
Yeah,
what a priest, an Anglican priest, would look like or act like, or a vicar, whatever
yeah, C of E.
terminology you choose. So, yeah, and I'm not a member of the C of E, so I don't know exactly. But
Well, no, you can't be.
no, I can't. Well, I'm actually I'm Episcopalian, which is the Church of England in the United States. But we were recognized by the Scottish Church first, so there's that. No, this is one of those where I look at it and I'm like, oh, it was just, I love it. I am a sucker for period pieces anyway. So Emma, Pride and Prejudice, this kind of goes in that same vein. I mean, because, I mean, yes, it's 100 years after
Down the line.
Austen, but I really do enjoy even seeing like these late Victorian, early Edwardian fashions and all that stuff. I really enjoy that. And it's interesting, kind of this push pull with between societal expectations and personal desires and expectations. So I really do enjoy that on a lot of levels. And as I said, my concerns or questions, for me, it really did, this book, because it was written by a man from 1900, it felt like it was a romance written by a man. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that that's how it felt. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally.
So,
I mean, for me, it felt the prose was incredibly poetic rather than, I mean, you think about a lot of the romances written today by men, and
I don't read
they,
those.
there have been quite a few, and I've picked up
I don't read
a
those.
couple, not necessarily by accident, but unintentionally, and the romance seems incredibly shallow.
Uh-huh.
Whereas there's something deep about the character. I mean, Forster, for all that you can tell that it is a romance written by a man, Forster has a way with words that cannot be denied, whatever. His prose is almost poetic. It's like reading a smooth song. And that's what I love about the book. It is one of those that you can pick up. I struggled to put it down, but I had to because I was desperately tired last night, and I was about 50 pages from the end, and I was literally lying there with the book on my face because I was exhausted. So I thought, right, I'm going to get up early this morning and I'm going to finish it, and then I'm going to watch the film, and I'm going to finish watching the film after we finish recording. But it is one of those books that all I could think was, he made me actually fall in love with his characters. And no matter what, I don't know, it's not just Julian Sands in the film, it is George in the
Hurt.
book. No, that, oh God, no, that really doesn't hurt. Him with his foppish hair and the strange smile and everything. And he was a very, very, very handsome man in his youth. And oh dear Lord, does he have a nice pert bottom? But that's neither here nor. And you see him completely naked, which is really strange, especially as this film's a PG. But we don't even need to go there either.
Apparently, they've cut that out.
Yeah, you said, but they haven't cut it out of my version, so I don't care. And it's also currently, if you're in the UK, you can stream it on Channel 4 right now.
Well, it is streaming. I rented it from Amazon. I streamed it from Amazon, and I had initially been doing some research and perhaps going to get the DVD. And I don't know if did I already say this on the podcast?
You did indeed.
Sorry.
That they cut it.
Yeah, and it was very strange. So I didn't even know if I would see that scene again when I streamed it, but I did. So.
Well, that's something. And that's the thing, as I said, they are in the UK. It was originally funded partially by Channel 4. So if you go on to Channel 4 right now, literally right now, it's only airing for the next 27 days from today, which is the 8th of May. And it is on Film 4 as a streaming option for free in the UK. However, I just watched it on DVD.
Let me just say this to you. If for anyone who's an American listening to this, this is very British. Right, this is very British. And you just need to be aware of that going in. And if you like it, great. You know, if you like British period pieces, this is going to be your jam. But if you're not big into British period pieces, you may or may not enjoy it. You know,
that's the fun. That is something that I agree with completely. Because if you look at the films that we've talked about previously, in fact, the majority of the films and the books we've talked about previously, they've either been modern, or the films themselves have been American, or they've been based on British novels and made for an American audience. Because look at Emma. Emma the lead character was played by a well-known American actress. The accent was not very good, but that's neither here nor there. That's just my view. Her accent has got so much better in the English if you watch Sliding Doors. But I apologise, Gwyneth Paltrow's English accent in Emma was not the best. However, they were English books made into movies with an American audience in mind, because the American audience is bigger. However, A Room with a View was a completely English crew, a completely English cast, and
with snarky comments about Americans, by the way, added in just for flavor
oh yeah,
and fun.
but they're in the book.
Yes, I know.
Those particulars, and it is just the way, I think it is the way that, I'm trying to think. I've read quite a few books.
For the record, Mr. Eager was way more insulting of the American in the movie than he was the book.
In the book.
And I was like...
Yeah, but then they were also insulting about the British tourist.
Yes, I know, but I'm an American, and I'm sorry, I noticed his way more insulting attitude towards the American in the movie than the book, okay?
If you look at those saying that, if you look at the comments that both Miss Lavish and Mr. Eager make, to make it much easier to understand, Eleanor Lavish and Reverend Eager, who we keep on referring to as Mr. because that's what they tend to be called, because they aren't priests, they are vicars. They get called Mr. Anyway, they are both British subjects living in Italy.
They're expats.
So they're expats, and they have such a judgmental view of British tourists or tourists in general. In fact, one of the things in the book, we've mentioned a few times that there are certain things that they gave, certain elements of the book that they passed over to Charlotte and Miss Lavish rather than Lucy and Miss Lavish. And in the book, Lucy is relying on her Baedeker, as we were talking, her guidebook. And Miss Lavish takes it away from her and then leaves her stranded in the middle of Florence with no clue where she is, no clue how to get back to the pension, no Italian.
Which is really not well done of Miss Lavish.
Really not well done of Miss Lavish.
And if Charlotte were a good chaperone, she would have absolutely had nothing to do with Miss Lavish after that. I'm just saying.
It's only after Charlotte is caught having betrayed Lucy's trust that she declares, I won't speak with Miss Lavish again.
Yeah. But Miss Lavish won't care because she got the story that she needed already.
Yeah, exactly. And in the film, she even declares her intention to use Lucy.
Yep. I've got my eye on her.
She doesn't so much declare it in the book.
Yeah.
But she does declare in the film, oh, I have my eye on your young cousin.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that she will be perfect for an adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And you sit there thinking, what have you got in mind for her? She's an ingenue. She's completely innocent, has no awareness of the world. And you're telling her so-called chaperone that you intend to almost use her. And I think Charlotte is so desperate for the approval of a woman she seems to believe is her peer,
mm-hmm.
or even her superior, perhaps,
mm-hmm.
that she confides in her when she barely knows her.
Right.
They're vicious gossips.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's... I'm sure that we've managed to confuse you if you've never seen this movie, but...
I've read the book.
Yeah. So the action goes, it opens in Florence, and then the book has, they leave for Rome after... Okay, so they go out on a day trip, basically, in carriages. Mr. Eager is there, Mr. Beebe is there, and the Emersons are there. And the Emersons are there, and the men and the women kind of split up. But then Lucy kind of gets shooed away from Lavish and Charlotte, Miss Bartlett, and because I've had this cough forever. I'm sure it has nothing to do with sitting on the ground. And
they want to gossip.
Yeah, they want to gossip, and so but you can't do that in front of the ingenue, and so Lucy kind of sighs and goes away, and she literally stumbles, right? She literally stumbles in the book.
No, she's taken to, she goes to the driver.
Who takes her to Mr. Emerson, the young Mr. Emerson.
Yes, takes her to George.
And he kisses her, and then her chaperone shows up and is like, Lucy! And they go back. George walks back to the pensione from however far away they are. And they being Charlotte and Lucy, depart
for Rome
in a rush the next morning. And so then we don't see what happens in Rome at all, which is fine because
we know that she's gone to visit Cecil and his mother.
Yeah, I thought she met him in Rome.
No, she went in the book. They go to Rome because she knows that Cecil's there with his mother. She's received a letter informing her that he's there.
Okay.
In Rome.
And then the action opens again in England, and Cecil comes in from the garden telling Freddie and Mrs. Honeychurch she has accepted me. And Freddie is not excited. Freddie's like, cripes.
Freddie had already basically said he asked Freddie's approval.
Right.
And Freddie, the way that he asked for his approval is just...
Wouldn't it be wonderful? Yeah, wouldn't it be wonderful for Lucy and for this area if I married her? And Freddie's like, no.
I think there is another thing that he says in the book, and I just read it and I had to reread it because I couldn't believe it. I just read it and thought, what?
So Lucy is engaged to Cecil, who is unbearably high in the instep. He is he's a snob. He's supercilious, but he is dignified.
In the book, the narrator refers to him as her fiasco rather than her fiance.
Right.
Which I find quite amusing.
Yes. And so then there's a villa to let in the village and so on and so forth. And the Emersons take that. And so it's lots of very...
that.
I know. All sorts of unbelievable coincidences. It's fate, as George would say.
Yes.
And so George comes back into her orbit. And Charlotte, of course, shows back up because she's having the boiler fixed at her house.
And nobody really wants her there.
And so, anyway, eventually, all sorts of things happen, right? Not anything like major, but George kisses her again, and then
that kiss was just... And it's in the film, they make it look like she pushes him away only when she sees Cecil.
Yeah, exactly. And so she firmly breaks it off with George, but then she realizes when Cecil won't play tennis with her brother and his friend that he's real...
And it's also the way he starts talking about her mother.
Yeah.
I mean, he's so derogatory about everybody she knows.
Yeah, it doesn't like Freddie, doesn't like... To a certain point...
Doesn't like Mr. Beebe.
Do you even like me,
Yeah, it's kind of like, well... The thing is, though, you read many of the things that he says, and he calls her his Da Vinci, doesn't he?
Yes. You're a Da Vinci. You're a Da Vinci.
You're a Da Vinci. Yeah. And then there's one thing, when she's staying with him and his mother in London, and he says, oh yeah, I've got a note here, Mr. Eager is horrible, and it's in capital letters. When she stays with his mother, and it is... after she's seen that, his attitude to Sir Henry, she discovered something. Here we go. Lucy is becoming wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And there is that whole thing when her mother says, "Oh, you must marry her soon,"
Yep.
and then says, "Oh, she's getting rid of she's losing the Honeychurch taint."
Yes. So, and that's what I meant about her. She in the book and the movie, it seems like she's acted upon so much, and it's not until the very end where she actually does the acting. Like she's the one who finally, no, this is what I'm going to do, kind of thing. And
I
yeah,
mean, she rebelled big time.
yeah. I mean,
It's not just a tiny act of rebellion at the end of it. It's a
yeah.
massive, my entire family isn't speaking to me, but I've done what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
To be fair, I'd do that for George.
So that's what she calls off the engagement with Cecil, and then or Cecil. I don't know how that.
She actually doesn't. She says that I want you to release me. They are her exact words. I want you to release me from this engagement. It's not I want to end it. I want you to release me. And it's like, wow, that really says how she feels about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is the point where you start to realize she's thinking for herself now.
Mm-hmm. And so the engagement's called off, and at this point, George has already made arrangements for his father to leave Windy Corner, and because he just can't stand the thought of being anywhere near her because it breaks his heart every time, and which is how romantic is that he cares that much. Anyway, so yeah, this, that, and the other happens, and she comes to realize that she loves George, as we've said, because Mr. Emerson helps her realize that. And we don't actually see in the book or the movie them getting back together again. We just see that they have, because they are at the pension in Florence. And we must assume that they're going to be okay financially because she comes into her money, and you know,
And he has a job. It's not as
he
though
has a
he's
job,
not.
yeah.
And the
So,
thing is, the fact that he has a flat in London and his father is living in the country
mm-hmm.
doesn't say to me that they are impoverished in any way.
No,
They're
not
just
at
not
all.
as potentially as well off as many of the other people that they are in social circles with.
Right. So the Honeychurches are probably higher on the social rung. And I think the Honeychurches are come around because Miss Honeychurch does love her daughter. That's clear, right?
Oh yeah,
She
and
loves her
she
daughter.
also,
And
and it
Freddie
doesn't
loves
take
his
her.
sister. I mean, it's very clear that they're going to come around. They're not like members of the
Judgment.
aristocracy that are going to sit in judgment on her for marrying a man who is a step below them on the social ladder. That's just not who they are.
No,
That's because actually, Miss Honeychurch probably operates above her station, according to the book, at least. Like people
yeah,
mistook them for being the remnants of gentry when in fact they were not. You know.
no, exactly. That's the
So.
thing. That's it. I find that it is almost like a story of contrasts.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Reverend Beebe and Reverend Eager.
Mm-hmm.
You've got George and Cecil.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got Lucy and Charlotte. And I
Mm.
know that sounds weird, but quite often towards the end of the book, in fact, there's a very, very good line after Lucy has finished things with Cecil, and obviously she's told George she wants nothing to do with him because she doesn't love him, even though we can quite clearly see she does. There is one line after all that happens that is she goes to bed as Charlotte did 30 years previously.
Mm-hmm.
And then her mother even starts saying things like, "Oh, that's exactly like Charlotte. You're sounding like Charlotte." So there are those clear comparisons between the two. And
Oh,
in the film,
absolutely.
in the film, more is made of the fact that it seems like Charlotte is the way she is, not because of anything other than the fact that she actually herself had a disastrous love affair, maybe when she was around Lucy's age. So at that point, you start thinking, maybe I should feel sorry for her. And then you realize all the things she's done, and you think, no.
I don't have quite the level of contempt for Charlotte you do, but that having been said, I think you're absolutely right when it comes to the study and contrast. And I think it's very clear that if she had gone off to Greece with the Mrs. Allen, she would have become Charlotte. She would have been Freddie's daughter's chaperone at her tour of Italy.
Yeah.
20 years
she'd have been,
in the future.
Yeah. 20 or 30 years down the line, she would have been living the life of a spinster. And that is what she seems intent on doing until she speaks with Mr. Emerson. She even says, "Oh, I'm never going to get married. I'm going to be on my own." She has that is my decision, because as far as she's concerned, it's almost as though you have two choices. There are two paths for you to take.
Cecil.
She's been down one, Cecil, or marriage in general, and being a spinster like Charlotte.
No, I think for her, in her head, when she called it off with Cecil, that was it. That was it. That she was giving up on marriage in general, because, I think she was giving up on marriage in general and saying, okay, obviously I'm destined to be a spinster. And I don't think she seriously considered George as an option until Mr. Emerson said,
"But you're in love with him."
But you're in love with him. And that is what I'm sort of malfunctioning about over here, is that she has trouble, I guess, even knowing her own mind. I don't know. And that frustrates me.
Yeah, but then at the same time, I think that it's so sudden, and Charlotte keeps on telling her. The funny thing is, in the book, they actually lay the success of their escape at Charlotte's hands after all of it, which is quite funny.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Lucy hasn't an awareness. We've already said that she doesn't know herself. There are certain sparks of life that come through in her, like when she's playing tennis, and when she speaks with George and tells him, "I don't love you," and then she tells Cecil, using George's words, "You don't know how to be intimate with a woman." And
that's the thing, those aren't her words.
But at the same time, it's when it's him saying it to her that makes her suddenly realize that she was making the wrong choices for herself. So his telling her that gives her the confidence to act on it. I don't think if he hadn't said it to her, she'd have probably ended up married to Cecil, living under the watchful eye of her mother-in-law, with 4 little children that are like their father. Ew. Yeah, your face says it all. But that is what they'd have ended up like, because he didn't say it to her. And I think that what is very, very difficult for us as 21st century women is to realise this took place before women had the vote. This took place before suffrage, before women were allowed any independence. But I also find it really frustrating. Her mother runs their home. There is no father in the picture any longer because he's died. Yet her mother isn't even encouraging her daughter to be independent or think for herself.
Right. No, it's true. It's true. All right. Well, we have really dug into this. We are almost an hour in, so we probably need to call it a halt. I don't even know whose choice it is for the next one for June.
I can't remember, because this was kind of decided upon because we were talking about Emma and kept on getting distracted with talk of A Room with a View.
So we need to make a decision on what we're going to read for June.
Bearing in mind we're still on shutdown, and that means that anything we get cannot be from a library because we haven't got one.
Unless it's electronic. I think we need to go modern.
I agree. We have now done two old books, one 19th century and one 20th.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and early 20th, like early 20th.
Yeah, I know. But to be fair, most of them were the best.
So,
where's my library?
Why don't we decide off podcast, because we don't need people to listen to our ruminations, what we're going to do, and we can just post it on Twitter. Would that work?
Yeah, should do.
Yeah. We'll just post on Twitter what we're going to do next. There, by the way, when we talk about chili pepper ratings, there is no chili pepper rating for this book. Like, the movie has some full frontal male nudity in it, so heads up on that if you're watching it with your kids. But there's no chili pepper rating. Like, there's no...
That's the thing that I find really funny. The full frontal nudity is so innocent in a way. I mean, this movie is a PG-rated movie. And the full frontal nudity is not in any way gratuitous.
No, I just wanted to give people a heads up. That's all.
Yeah.
Like, I would probably not want my younger daughters to see this. Like, sorry, y'all. You don't need... I don't want necessarily to see that scene. But, everything else in this movie is completely about, no big deal.
I think Sarah Kate would love it.
Maybe. We'll see. All right. So we will tweet out what book we're going to do for everyone who wants to know, or movie, or whatever we decide on, and for June, and we will pop back in June. So, yeah. Raye, how can people find you? And us?
People can find... Yeah, people can find us on @ISN Romance on Twitter. They can find us romancenotdead.wordpress.com. They can also find us on Facebook if you search for Romance Isn't Dead. We're on YouTube. All of our podcast episodes are on YouTube. They're not video recordings of us chatting, though we could do that, because neither of us are ever in a fit human state to be seen by anybody when we record, because it's normally very early on a Sunday morning. Sally's looking at me and agreeing. And I think that's it for the podcast. And you can find me at All About Raye on Twitter, and I'm actually a bit more active on there right now because, well, it's a place to keep sane if you are in the right corners. Okay.
I'm not in the right corner of the Twitter world, by the way.
Oh God, no, you really aren't, because you do tweets about Star Wars. That's not a safe place.
It is not a safe place. It is not for the faint of heart. Especially if you are a female Star Wars fan who likes romance, man. It's a scary world out there. You have to curate your experience. So anyway, I am Palmetto Blue on Twitter and Instagram. If you'd like to find me in either of those places, if you find me on Instagram, I'm sorry, it's mostly fiber crafting. Just give you a heads up. Occasional Star Wars post or whatnot. But I've gotten Raye into some fiber crafting as well. I'll totally take credit. And so anyway, Palmetto Blue, Twitter and Instagram. And Raye, how would you sign out today?
Keep on searching for your happily ever after.
And I would remind you that romance isn't dead. It's alive and well on your bookshelf. Bye.
Bye.